So we have Bruce live in the locker room in Tallahassee celebrating on the field with the Florida State. And I don't know why, like, we were able to run the ball so well in the first half, especially to the left side, and then all of a sudden we started to abandon it. And like I said, there is some inconsistency.
How are they going to approach this game? How are they going to beat this Florida State team?
Well, we're going to break you guys.
Okay, that's it. The show's over.
In the story, we're going to break you guys. Look, and I'm joking, but it's true.
Lord, the climb continues, KB. Oh my God!
I am sweating.
Look at my heart. Look.
You know what? Yeah, I have so much to say. All right. Welcome back to Seminole Sideline 365. We're here on a Friday night with you. Thank you for stopping by. We hope you're having a great week wherever you are. If you're like me, you're shoveling yourself out of inches of snow. If you're other parts of the country, it's probably a lot more snow. But we hope you're staying warm. Thank you for being with us. We're going to talk some FSU football and hopefully have a good time. How's it going, old man? Where are you?
Hey,
is it cold? Is it warm?
It's not snowing in Florida, okay?
Not yet.
However, yeah, I'm just starting to feel better after 2 weeks of being kind of under the weather. I actually broke through earlier in the week and started getting rid of the upper respiratory thing, which I know a lot of people, it's going around. And
yep.
But I canceled a doctor's appointment because I started feeling a lot better. So actually, my immune system, through the adversity came back and knocked it out. So actually I feel pretty good, but we're supposed to play one of our softball games on Saturday, but I told the coach I'm not going to risk it because it was supposed to be really cold. It's supposed to be like 30s or 40s in the morning tomorrow.
You don't want to. No, you just don't want to play in the cold. That you don't want to risk it. You just don't want to play in the cold. What if the Florida State player said, "Coach, I want to opt out of the game"?
Hey,
cold
he can opt out. So I decided not to risk getting the upper infection again, and decided I would opt out. And guess what happened this afternoon? The game was canceled because of weather. Because of weather, actually. So it's supposed to be really cold tomorrow morning, so we lucked out. Our first two games have been weathered out, but our starting pitcher was not going to be there the last two games, so we kind of lucked out. I lucked out. So it's all good, but it's nothing like it is up east where you guys are. That's a real disaster. One thing I saw in the news, KB, this guy in a car comes around and tries to pass a semi-trailer truck, on a snowy highway, and it's not a passing lane. It's 2 lanes of traffic, right?
Yeah.
And the guy comes speeding around, loses control of his car, and smashes into another tractor trailer.
Yeah,
who the hell does that?
It's nuts.
It's ridiculous. But I'll tell you, the 2 weeks I've been down, I mean, look, the phone. Ringing. Look at this phone, buddy. You ever seen one of these? Look at this.
Not for a while.
This goes back.
Yeah.
This is an official FSU phone. I love this thing. I don't think
kids these days call that a burner phone.
No.
Yeah,
look at the case, though. Isn't that cool? That's a classic.
That's back in the days when you had to. Well, when everybody had to buy minutes, these days people go to the store to buy minutes. No, but that's back in those days. You actually had to remember you only had so many minutes a month, so you had to buy them, right? That was the thing.
I don't remember.
I remember that. I remember it was like you only had so many text messages, and you had to buy. So you only had so many minutes this month.
This is a classic. This is a classic right here. But you remember? Well, I remember when there were the first phones that came out, portable phones, was the bag phones. Right?
Yeah,
These big bags that you had to carry on like a purse. It was unbelievable. But yeah, the phone's been busy for Florida State, right?
Yep,
the phone has been very busy, and I have copious notes and charts, and and we're going to talk about that.
Yeah, let's dive into it. So we're going to talk about 3 different kind of things tonight. We're going to talk about all the flurry of additions that we've had since we last spoke, and talking about it as a whole. Because I think there is a bit of a trend here, a trend that we want to discuss, and I want to discuss specifically, and you may disagree with that. But to talk about what we've seen so far and what positions we've seen hits on, and where we may be missing at certain positions, not player-wise, but where we may have needed to fill some holes before the spring. But we can talk about that. Then we'll talk about setting the expectations. Obviously, with the Alabama news and how that's affected Florida State and affected Mike Norvell's bank account, what are the expectations for 2024? And then we'll go and we'll talk about the latest on the lawsuit and with the ACC and where we're headed with that, and if Florida State is any closer to getting out of the ACC. So with that, let's dive right into the show and talk about what is going on in the portal and what is going on with what FSU is building and who they're targeting in the portal. So I think the biggest thing that we look back on after this season, upcoming season 2024, is what would have happened if Nick Saban didn't retire? Because when you look at it, Florida State has grabbed 5 players from Bama alone, and that has worked out for Florida State, right? You get Sean Murphy, you get Rodell Williams, you get Terrence Ferguson, you get Malik Benson, you get 5 players from Alabama, which you couldn't have been banking on before. Because I don't know if those players leave if Nick Saban does. Because how many players has Alabama churned out so far? They've lost almost 30 plus players so far. Most of them, highly rated players. I don't know if those players leave. You would expect some churn out from programs like that, but Alabama has not seen churn like that in forever, and that is absolutely on Nick Saban retiring, a legend retiring, and Alabama basically having no NIL program set up. So with that, Florida State pounces.
Oh, wait a minute. You said they don't have an NIL program?
A sufficient NIL program, yes.
You really believe that?
Yes. Everybody's reporting that, yes.
Wow.
Because
I guess playing for Nick Saban was the NIL. That's what you got when you came there.
Players were willing to take a discount to play for Nick Saban, 100%. 100%.
Yeah, okay.
Because they knew if they played for Nick Saban and got developed the right way, they were going to make a huge paycheck in the NFL, 100%.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Okay.
So Alabama's loss is Florida State's gain, and they get those 5 players. But what, and I'm not going to play the what if game tonight, but that works. If that doesn't happen, Florida State may be in a weird hole right now, but it doesn't work that way. Florida State works out and they fill some position needs in that linebacker, running back, inside line for with Terrence Ferguson, as well as receiver among and cornerback with Earl Little Jr. So you really make out with that. The biggest thing I'm noticing with this transfer class so far of anything is that it's a mixture of a lot of multi-year eligible players versus you going for and trying to find the next one and done guy that's high production, high cost with that. But you're not looking just to fill holes with high performance guys who have proven it, done it, and are looking to do 1 year kind of what you would say, what you've said before, mercenaries. Most of the guys that Florida State is getting right now or has gotten, I think it's 60-40 or whatever the split is. Most of the guys on this roster that they brought in, one, are talented, are talented from their high school ranks. And once again, we can talk about that and potential versus production. But you have brought in a lot of blue chip players onto this roster. And we talked about that, around December with the signing class and how Mike Norvell has done a great job of increasing the blue chip rate on this roster, because that does make a difference. Let's not act like it doesn't. You need talent to win games. But in the case of Miami, they have a lot of talent on that roster. You have to be able to coach that talent, right? You have to be able to develop that talent. You can't just grab a bunch of 4-stars and expect to show up and win. You do also have to be able to develop and coach that talent. And I do believe that Mike Norvell and the staff can do that. So that is kudos to them. but I believe it's 65 to 70% of the players, the transfers, and the high school kids they brought in just in 2024. 70% of them are blue chip players, which is great. Which is a leading factor in why they have one of the top recruiting classes in the country right now when you take in transfers into the equation. Now, the big thing to me, like I was pointing on, and I'll let you get a comment in, is that only 6 of the 14 players they brought in so far has 1 year of eligibility left. So more than half of your players, around 60, sorry, I can't do the fraction in my head, but more than 50% of the players you brought in have 2+ years left of eligibility. And I think that is massive to what the strategy of Mike Norvell is. He's not playing, and I'm not saying they're not playing for 2014, but I think he understood that, he's kind of playing from behind in terms of two high school classes ago, they didn't have the best recruiting class, right? They were in the top 25, but not the top 10. The year after that, they weren't in the top 10. This last year was the best recruiting class, the top 10 class that he's had when you had the blue chip talent. And I think to accelerate that process and to becoming a national championship contender every single year is we need to fill the holes. We need to churn out more of those 3-star players we have on our roster quicker. And how do we do that? We get guys that have 2 or 3 years of experience left on their roster, and we develop them our way. And how do you do that? You get the Alabama kids, the Earl Little Juniors, the Malik Bensons, the Roydell Williams. You get those players who have multiple years left, low production but high potential, and you get them on your roster. So you give up 1 year of eligibility on them, but you have 2 or 3 more years left that you can do it your way. Get them into the system, and it's just like you got them out of high school, right? And I think they are accelerating their development process and accelerating and raising the floor of the talent on this team by doing the way they're doing it. They're not going after the 1 year mercenaries and saying we need a bunch. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with being 1 year players at all. But I think what this team needed desperately was to shed more of the 3 stars on this team and get what they just got. Was those 4 stars from Alabama, 4 or 5 stars from Alabama, the guys from Georgia, including Marvin Jones Jr., the kid from West Virginia, who I believe has got, I think it was a 3 or 4 star, but kids like that who are going to be in the system for a while, and they are going to produce not just this year, but in 2015 and potentially 2026 as well, for up to 3 years. And I think that's huge. I'll let you get a word in. Sorry about that.
Well, I think that's a pretty good summary and analysis, KB, of what you're suggesting is that instead of the 1 year guy coming in, plug and play right now, a one and done, which was very common at the University of Kentucky basketball for a while. It was one and done and to the pros, because they had to meet the minimum requirements.
Yeah.
And he was rebuilding the team all the time. But you can see now that some of that is caught up with him, but, a lot has changed as well. You're right about the numbers. I mean, the 1 year guys that have come in now, the 1 year guys are DJ Ungale. See, Ungale. I've been practicing.
There you go.
DJ's a 1 year guy. And one of the Alabama guys, and that's Roydell Williams.
Yep.
And you got a 1 year guy in Richie Leonard. Okay.
And so on the
Richie Leonard. So there's 3 guys that you're really taking those guys as plug and play.
Yeah.
You needed a quarterback because you didn't have any experience in the room. Okay. Yeah. Except, and some people may take note of that I said no experience. Well, Brock Glenn still really doesn't have a lot of experience in my eyes. He's got a high potential, high ceiling, and those experiences that he's had now, the experiences in the ACC championship, he got some time, the experience in the Georgia game, Georgia game, even though that was whatever the hell it was, a controlled scrimmage that I supported and you supported people opting out on. But you're right. They've brought in, and you and I have talked offline about the potential, that there is more guys with potential than proven on on-field performance, right? And so I don't know if fans or us, I'm a little bit more conservative. I think you are too in our calls on this stuff. Are these guys ready to plug and play? Everybody that we've talked about on here, let's take Marvin Jones Jr.
Yeah.
Huge upside on this guy from Georgia. You know, Shade Tree Jones, his dad, a legacy guy. I mean, the question is, he hasn't had that much on-field performance, you know, in an every down type situation or even a rotation, you know. How's he going to do when he's playing, 30, 40, 50 snaps a game if he gets that rotation? And that applies to a lot of people, not just Marvin Jones Jr., okay? There's a number of guys on this list. I feel really comfortable with DJU at quarterback. I think that is a great pickup. You know, I think that is I think DJU, we've talked about this, mature guy who can run this offense efficiently, and potentially match up what did we score? Average 30-some points, 33, 30
points, yeah.
30-plus points on average per game. I think he can get close to that. I think he can get 28 to 33 points, you know, in that regard. Yeah. So for me, that is a huge pickup, which definitely had to happen in that regard. Now, let's see. The other thing will be Rondell Williams from Alabama, okay? The running back, he's a senior. This guy has proven on the field good, solid performance, and he is a tough guy. Yep. These guys are motivated by what? This is it. This is what they have to put on tape, and so they want very good performances to get to the next level. Yep. So every game, they're going all in. They're going to work their asses off in spring. They're going to prepare over the summer. And when they hit fall camp, they're all in because now their resume is being put out there. Now, the other guys, the question is, out of these other guys, how much contribution do we see? But I kind of like the way the staff does it. They kind of rotating guys through, especially on the defensive side. And on the offensive line, there's kind of a rotation there as well. Maybe 7, 8 deep, you know, in the offensive line. The defensive line, generally they're, you know, on the interior, they're going 4 deep. On the edges, they're going 4, you know, to get rotations. I think these guys are going to get a lot of playing time. The question is, how do you satisfy all the mouths that came in, okay? And how do you satisfy the mouths of the guys that are already on this football team, okay? Now we're all in. I'll give you an example, and I'll get your comment. On the wide receiver room, it is, you want me to go through the names here?
No,
I mean, you got Douglas, Poitier, Span, Josh Burrell just went out.
They're right here. They're all right here.
He went out. Right, you got Hill, you got Williams, you got Jacobs, you got Moore, Fry, Gibson, McCoy.
I got him on the screen. Yeah,
Malik Benson.
Yeah. I think that is.
And what's going to happen at the end of spring? How many guys? And that's another show. But I'm just projecting. It is got to be. This is where Florida State wanted to be, like Alabama or a Georgia. There's so much competition every day.
Well, yeah,
you're competing for spots, and if you're not one of the top guys, you will either stay and work harder or you're going to leave. And that's what you want to be in.
And that's
right?
where you can't care if somebody leaves or not. At this
no.
Point. And that's like you said, we wanted to get to a point where we don't care if people leave or not.
And we wish them well when they do leave.
Yeah, but you can't care. The only thing is that you don't want an Alabama situation where like your entire team leaves, but that is a one-off situation.
Yeah, that's a coach. That's a head coach rebuild.
But
right.
if you have churnouts, and that's going to happen, most likely will happen in the spring with the receivers when you have 13 receivers on signed, because all these guys aren't going to play, and you probably can't afford to carry all these scholarships into the fall. You're going to find out who stands out come spring practice. And who's going to? It could be the freshmen, because look at everyone you have. You have 5 seniors battling for a spot, and all 5 of those seniors are going to want to show what they have in their final year, whether that's Duspan or Kentron or Darian or Ja'Kai. I think Ja'Kai will probably stay because they just brought in his brother, regardless, and Jalen Lucas. But you have a lot of, and Malik Benson's a senior, and you brought him in to show what he's got. But it's a weird mix too, because you have 6 seniors, and then you have everyone else that's a sophomore or freshman. So you have this divide between a lot of underclassmen and a lot of people on the cusp of graduating. So it'll be interesting who wins out, because it's a lot of young, very high potential, and a lot of guys who have their last chance to show what they have. But you have everybody on that team right there, and that receiver list has less than 250 yards. I think less than 300-yard career yards receiving. The 2 highest guys, I believe, on your career receiving yards is, I believe, Ja'Kai Douglas and then Jalen Lucas, who's not even listed as a receiver. He's got more receive, and they list him as a running back, because that's what he did both at Indiana. He played as a running back and as a receiver, but they don't even list him as a receiver because they'll probably gadget him as a running back.
Well, where was some of those kick return yards? Those were not counted on the running back.
They use him as a running back. Yeah. But they also use him as a receiver.
Well, let's use this list since you have it up. Duspan is not going to be a starting receiver. He's probably.
I'm not ready to say that, because
I am.
There's no
I'm
one
ready to say that.
I can't say anyone else is better than him.
Well, look at his stats from 23 on as receiver.
Look at all their stats. You can look at all their stats. The leading receiver.
I'm just
Ja'Kai Douglas.
Yeah, I'm just venturing a guess. I don't see Duspan as the starting wide receiver on this football team. Kentron, I do. Okay, Kentron, this is his year. This is it. I think Kentron, if he isn't getting a lot of work and sees himself as a starter coming out of spring, I could see him. He's gone. Okay, I think, but he's going to be a 1 or 2. Darian Williamson, same thing. Darian's been injured. I don't know if he's a true competitor in the room. Ja'Kai Douglas, I like his hands. He's kind of that slot guy I really like. I think he's going to play a lot. Yes. I don't know enough about Malik Benson.
Well, you just want him in. So
Yeah. Hakeem Williams is the guy. We liked him when he was on the field. His blocking downfield. He's a tough guy. He was willing to do the blocking. He was willing to do the dirty work. I think he's going to be a real competitor and could be a starter on this team. Destin Hill is kind of still the unknown for me. A guy with a lot of potential.
Are in the same boat. I think they both have to show what they have. They're both highly rated, and they need to show something.
Yeah. So. Now, Van Jacobs, I don't know. I think he has good upside. Can he get enough reps to show off? But when he does, he needs to show off. Jalen Brown, another guy, McCoy, Elijah Moore. These guys, the true freshmen, not going to see the field a lot, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think the bottom of the list,
I think that's a fair opinion, don't you?
These guys, it'd be great, but I don't think, unless you lose 4 guys on this list, these guys are probably going to see the field, unless they stand out above the rest and they're like elite, and they're not dropping anything. I don't see anyone.
And they may get redshirted.
Exactly.
Some of them, a couple of them could get redshirted.
Exactly. But I think really what you need to see is someone like Hakeem Williams or Destin Hill live up to their star ranking and really step up. They've had a year to develop under Norvell, learn the offense. They need to be one of the guys that steps up as the number 1 or 2 receiver.
Because what do we know now, KB? We know every year now there's a ton of receivers that go into the portal that have decent on-the-field production.
And Florida State didn't pick any of those guys up.
I know.
They decided to say, we are going to stick with what we have and also invest in high potential guys down the road. And that's what they did. They said, okay, and they saw Malik Benson. They said, we think that you can. And what they strategically did is they went after guys who have a lot of speed too. They wanted to bring more speed into this.
They want to stretch the field. They want to stretch the field, which opens things up not only in the running game, but on those under safety routes as well. So I think it's smart.
They went from a big team with Johnny Wilson and Keon Coleman to, like you said, a very speed-oriented team, which they brought that in. And I do believe I think DJ's a little bit more accurate quarterback than Jordan Travis probably is in terms of passing, delivering the football. And so I think that's a little bit of that's transition too. Like you already had pieces who were big, and you're being recruited as a receiver for Jordan Travis to throw to. And I do believe that DJ brings that dimension of being a little bit more of an accurate passer and who can deliver that football personally. And so I think that they're bringing weapons to utilize him in that way. And like you said, it will open up the field more and will stretch out that defense to allow you to run the ball a little bit more effectively too.
Now, what I've read about DJ too is that he likes the pro set a little bit more under center as well and play action. And it's going to be very interesting to see if Mike Norvell plays to his quarterback's strength, which I think that's what you do.
He typically does.
Typically. So to see, I think for this quarterback too, who does not scramble as well as Jordan Travis could make a lot of things go with his legs. DJ will run the ball, but I think he wants to show too the pro style, not only taking it out of the shotgun, but also from up under center, play action with the running backs that we have now. The play action freezes linebackers, right? Yeah. And it opens up those routes behind them as well. So if you can get that running game going, do the play action, you have a very experienced quarterback with these weapons in the receiver room. I'm feeling pretty good with that at this point, even though there isn't a tremendous amount of production. But we've had a lot of players come in with not a lot of production and who did very well.
Yeah, and that was the thing that was scaring me before, because I thought we should go for at least one veteran receiver to pair up with DJ.
You're thinking a Keon Coleman type guy.
Yeah, but then, like you said, we've brought in guys like Trey Benson, and we've brought in guys before that haven't necessarily had proven production and gotten things out of them. So I don't doubt that this coaching staff can't get development. Can't develop guys or get them to the next level. It just scares me in a receiver room where, guys, it's a very skill-oriented position, and it's a new quarterback, new receivers who haven't played together. It's not like, these young guys, it's not like Kentron, Deuce have been playing with the scout team with, Brock Glenn. In my mind, it would have been different if Brock Glenn was going into next season as a quarterback and they would have that chemistry a little bit.
Right.
DJ used a new quarterback in the system with new receivers, stuff like that. Not to say they won't work with each other, but also in my mind, DJ is a guy who's been there and done that. He's done this with different programs, different teams, with young receivers, old receivers. It's not his first day at the office, right? So I do think that he will work hard with these receivers to get the most out of them. And I do think that is one other reason why Mike Norvell felt comfortable enough to say, we are going to go after the right people for the system to match you with versus just going for the guy that has 1,200 yards, career yards to match you up with, right? That may not necessarily fit what we want to do in this offense. So I think this is a kind of a kudos for what they believe in their quarterback to say, we're going to get the best guys who not only are going to fit for you today, but will fit for this team later on.
Yes.
And because we believe what you can do in this offense with these players around you. And so I think that's kudos for DJ and what they believe in him and why they brought him into this offense. They believe in him that much that he'll elevate this room and get the most out of these young guys, as well as the veteran guys like Kentron and Darian Williamson. But like I said, I think this room will change. I think 2, 3, maybe 4 receivers from this room will leave. But there's only a few of these guys that can. I don't think Ja'Kai will with Jalen Lucas coming in. I don't think, the young
Ja'Kai's
guys
not going to leave.
Yeah, and these young guys, these freshmen they just came in aren't going to leave. So there's only honestly 6 or 7 guys that could leave. I don't think so. I think you maybe lose 2 or 3. but I think most of the room will stay intact. And I think it's, like I said, a very talented room, but we need to see some of that talent emerge because we've always said, this is Kentron's year. This is Kentron's year. This is Kentron's year. Well, Kentron, this is your year. This is your final year. You need to, you are going to be in the rotation. There's no doubt in my mind that you will be in the rotation. You need to show the tools that you've got.
And he's shown those flashes.
Exactly. He's shown the flashes. You saw in the Georgia game, the biggest play of the game for the offense was that bomb that Brock Glenn threw to him that he caught for 60 yards, I believe was, right to the 3-yard line. Of course, we couldn't punch it in for the touchdown, but, he caught a great ball from Brock Glenn. And I think that was a glimpse of what this offense could do if you get a guy that can pump the ball down and get it, because he beat the DB for Georgia, the starting DB. He got behind him, and Brock Glenn delivered a beautiful ball to him. So if we can do things like that consistently, and we brought in all the speed, I think that is a glimpse of what this offense could look like next year.
Well, I think it's also going to open up these underneath routes. Yeah. Like you say, with the speed, guys stretching the field, they're going to have to respect that.
We didn't see a lot of that last year.
No, we did not.
We would scream about, why didn't we throw it underneath a lot more last year?
Right.
And dump it down. And I don't know if that's Jordan didn't see it as much, or it wasn't just available to him, or they didn't call it.
And remember, we got a pretty good tight end room too. Morlock's back. He's got great hands. I'd like to see him get more balls, to be honest. I'd like to see that happen. We've got some young talent in there. You've got Jackson West is still developing. You got Layden Thomas, who's supposed to be a lot of upside. So here's the other thing, KB. Remember, at the end of spring, when everybody starts to change teams again, there may be a receiver out there that they pick up. Okay? This, to me, is Mike Norvell is saying, I'm always playing for the next year. Every coach always thinks, you're in this year, but you're also playing for the next year. So his thinking is that, but he is also thinking, win now. He is now a $10 million man. And he's one of the highest paid coaches in college football. He must meet the expectations of the fan base, which is you must be in the playoff every year.
No, you're totally right. And I think you saw some of these moves last year in the transfer portal. Like, you saw a lot of win now moves, and you saw a lot of let's build for later. So you saw Keon Coleman was a win now move. You saw Braden Fisk was a win now move. You saw Casey Roddick was a win now move. You saw Jaheim Bell was a win now move. But then you saw the let's build for later. So you saw Justin Cryer was a young linebacker that, was a freshman. We need to build up our linebacking room. Let's bring him in from Northwestern. You saw, Fentrell Cypress had multiple years. Talented guy, all ACC at UVA. He's coming back this year.
Yes.
DeAndre Jones, Jeremiah Byers, they're coming back for another year. Which you would be in trouble on the offensive line if you didn't have that depth, that rotation. You may not think they're elite guys, but they are coming back. You get them for multiple years. Kyle Morlock, you would be in trouble if you didn't have him coming back for another year. Darrell Jackson, you may have not had him come, but you have him for another year. Keziah Holmes, once again. So
DJ Lundy has come back, and he was a productive linebacker for this team
he wasn't
last
transfer.
year.
I'm talking about transfer.
Transfer. Okay.
Yeah, but I'm talking about, so you're seeing that mixture of win now guys versus the build for later guys, the guys that can give you those multiple years. And so I think the way that they approach the transfer portal is good. You're seeing the instant impact guys mixed with the guys that can give you developmental years, as well as, in 2 years they may be ready to play, or they can be rotational guys. And so I think Mike Norvell has done a really good job of mixing these guys in, as you can see here from last year, with the guys that we expect to play this year. But back to what you said with the tight end room, I do think that is one area of concern, but it's another area that they are expecting development. We are going to need some guys to step in the receiver room, because there's a lot of young guys on the room, but there's a lot of untapped potential, guys that will need to get more than 200 yards career to be successful this year. Tight end is another room like that. Kyle Morlock had close to 300 yards this year. He had some flashes, but once again, he wasn't used to the Division I size, I think, sometimes, right? Of using his body, blocking sometimes, whereas Jaheim Bell was playing the SEC before Florida State. Jackson West was hurt a lot last year. Brian Courtney, is moving around, right? Sometimes he's playing linebacker, sometimes he's playing tight end. And then you bring in, Layden Thomas is the 5-star, 4 or 5-star tight end. So this is a room that is going to be based solely on what does the development look like year over year. Kyle Morlock could be a stud. I think the guy has great hands. You saw it multiple times when he caught some of the seam passes down the middle of the field from Jordan. But you need him to really develop over the summer and over the spring and get bigger and get strong, get more physical and be able to, make some blocks and be a every down kind of guy.
Yeah, your point is well taken. If you look at the elite football teams around the country, they generally have a very effective tight end system working for them. Look at Georgia. We don't need to get into that. You've had great tight ends there. You've had good tight ends.
Ohio State.
Miami's
had good tight ends.
Yeah,
they've been good.
So that just puts so much pressure on the defense. If you're stretching the field and then you've got a good, effective tight end situation, you've got a running back who can catch the ball out of the backfield, and you have a balanced running game, you're loaded. There's no reason this team, with the talent on this team, that they can't be that effective. I really believe that. I take a conservative view of things. But I still go back, KB, to the menace that I always talk about. And that menace is the offensive line. Mm-hmm. I'm always concerned about where we stand there. Have we made improvements in the portal, in your opinion, at this point?
So I've read other articles, and once again, I'm not a media insider, so I read all the articles and get their feedbacks from various people, which I find interesting. I do think they have. I don't, like I said, and I said this a show or two ago. I don't think this line is going to get. I don't expect it to make a leap next year, but I expect it to stay the same. I expect it to be the same. Stay, and that was good enough to win you the ACC, and was good enough
and win every game.
Yeah, and win every game, and should have gotten to the playoffs.
Yeah.
Which maybe that is very good. Maybe that is elite level. But I think it's going to be probably the same as next year, right? Who do you lose? You lose Casey Roddick. Is your starter, is your only starter that you're losing this year? Is that correct? Maybe someone correct me.
Who transferred out? Who transferred
you
out?
You lose Dimitri Emmanuel, and you lose Casey Roddick.
Yeah,
starting wise,
right?
That's really it. So. And everyone else is coming back. So look at everyone. You bring in, you have 16 offensive line this year. A lot of seniors. Look at all the seniors on the list. Robert Scott, Jeremiah Byers, Keon J. Jones. Marcus Smith, Maurice Smith, Darius Washington. And then look who you bring in. Richie Leonard, who was a starter at Florida, playing the SEC. I think he's a pretty talented guy who either will compete for the guard position or be a rotational.
He has to be.
He will, but I think that's a great pickup by Florida State. Definitely improve that. Terrence Ferguson, redshirt junior, not a high snap guy, but by all accounts, a talented guy. I think the good part is that he should compete for a position. If anything, he doesn't have a lot of mileage on his body, right? So it's not a guy that's been injured 4 or 5 times already, or has had 1,000 snaps in his career. This is a guy that is a floor guy that should be able to come in and be a rotational quality piece, if not compete in the spring and fall for a spot. And then look below. You have some of those talented pieces that Atkins has recruited successfully. Julian Armella, redshirt sophomore, Jalen Early, Lucas Simmons.
Right.
At some point, I think these guys, Brian Sinestes was a 4-star, right? These 3 guys, I believe, need to be ready this year to be able to plug in. That is my personal thing. Jalen Early, Julian Armella, Bryson Estes need to be able to compete this year. So I think you really right now these guys need a year to develop. So that's 6 guys. So you are 10 deep right now, in my opinion, and I think that's good. I think you're 10 deep, and now I'm not as knowledge to say, well, this guy plays guard, this guy's inside offensive line, but I think you have 10 quality guys right now. And once again, I'm not in the locker room. I can't say Julian Armella is ready to play, but Jalen Early, Julian Armella, Brian Estes, based on their grading in high school and based on what they were brought in to do, by now should be ready to play in year 3, right? This is 3 years of development. This is 4 years of development. These guys need to be ready to play. So that's 10 deep. I don't feel as bad about the offensive line based on the 2 moves they brought in. I wouldn't mind if they brought in another guy, but I think right now I feel okay that they can produce what they did last year. That's my opinion. What are your thoughts? Oh, I lost the old man. So what do you guys think? I think based on what I just said, that the offensive line can produce at a good or average to good-ish level based on those 10 players right there. I might be counting wrong. But that's my basic opinion on that. Like I said, one more guy I wouldn't be mad at, one more veteran type guy to compete for a spot, or even a younger piece. If you can get one of these, another Bama kid to come over, if he's a freshman or sophomore that wants to come in and develop for a year under Atkins and be ready to play next year and compete. Because look, you are going to lose 6 players next year. What, 6 players on this line? That's the scarier part, I think, for Florida State, is you're going to lose 6 offensive linemen due to eligibility next year. And Florida State has not, and look who's behind them. You don't have a bunch of, you only have 2 sophomores. All these guys next year, the guys I just kind of highlighted, all these guys need to be ready to play next year. And you have a lot of freshmen who need to be ready to play as sophomores. So that's the scary part. I would not mind if Florida State was able to get 1 or 2 more younger guys, sophomores, who are ready to develop, because that is the part that should be more scary, is that in 2025, you're going to lose a bunch of guys on the offensive line. But for now, I think we are good to go. We are good to go. Now, flipping on to the other side, because we just talked offensive line, we look at defensive line. So look at defensive line. I think, grading defensive line players, and I'll flip over to that. So you got edge rush. You got Marvin Jones Jr., you got Sonoe, I'm going to mispronounce the name. You got Sonoe Lolohea. You got Tomoyo from West Virginia. You got these 3 guys. I think the edge position, I don't think you're going to be able to replace what you had in Jared Verse. I mean, that's, you brought in 3 really good players, right? And like this article says on 24/7, highly graded players. The kid from West Virginia, he had really good production, albeit it was against, his biggest games were against some lower level competition or not, not as high competition. But I think that guy, like he's been quoted to say, he's not coming in to be a rotational piece. He wants to come in to be a starter. And I love that from that kid saying that. And that guy you have for three years, I believe, which once again, I love. Marvin Jones Jr., once again, hasn't had a lot of playing time, but has very high upside. The kid from Oregon State is the guy I think will be your starter. And I think that's a good piece because he has a proven track record of what he's done on the field. But I don't think he's Jared Verse. Do I think he can give you very solid games? 100%. But I don't think you are going to replace Jared Verse production or a guy that's going to potentially garner double teams like Jared Verse did at times, right? So you're bringing in 3 guys to replace the hole that Jared Verse brought, Jared Verse leaves. But I love all these pickups because I think in the long term, developing 2 of these guys, Marvin Jones and the kid from West Virginia, will be great for you because these could be these could be all ACC kids in 2 years from now under Odell and development. And I think the kid from Oregon State is a great plug-and-play piece right away based on his track record. So I'm okay with this. And 24/7, they give him an A grade on defensive end piece. I would give it a B+. The thing that kills you, if you could have gotten the kid from Purdue, the Nick Scorton, I believe his name was, that is your Jared Verse replacement. That is your 1-for-1 replacement in my eyes. If you could have gotten Nick Scorton, I believe he went to Texas A&M, I believe it was. If you could have gotten that guy, that's your 1-for-1. That's your A+. That's your A grade. But I think getting these 3 guys to try to replace that impact and once again build for the future, I think it's very, very well done in my eyes. So I'm not going to complain about that. And then you look on the defensive tackle side, you're pretty good there. Braden Fisk, once again, you're looking to replace a massive hole that Braden Fisk leaves you. And I think I don't know if Braden Fisk gets enough credit for what he did last year.
Oh, he was a monster.
Yeah, you go back and watch those games, and you just put the camera on that guy, the motor, and what his pursuit and his push. I mean, if you don't bring him in, I think he just makes Fabian Lovett's impact actually be felt. 2 years ago we were talking about, well, Fabian Levitt's got hurt, and Fabian Levitt's doing all this and that. I think Braden Fisk is Fabian Levitt's best friend, because I think without Braden Fisk next to him, I don't think Fabian Levitt's impact is felt as much this year. And I think he would agree with that. Those guys,
Fabian Lovett didn't start one game last year.
No.
I looked at the stats, the official stats, and he was not a starter in one game. Now, he was a rotation.
I don't
know
that matters as much.
What his average snap. I know, but I find that kind of interesting, because in some matters, people say, well, how many starts? You see that thrown around a lot. I'm not saying it's a crucial thing, but he didn't. Braden Fisk started, I think, just about every game. So I think Braden Fisk was our best inside defensive lineman on this football team last year.
I would agree, but I do think
most consistent.
I think him and Lovett were a great complement to each other, and then what the edge pieces did. That's why that line was so dominant, because what Farmer and Burst did together with it was just. That was one of the best defensive lines we had in a very long time.
Yeah, no doubt, KB. Now, I think your same logic is going to apply to Pat Payton on the end. Marvin Jones and whoever else is rotating on that side, right?
Yeah.
They need to have a good year, because Pat Payton wants to have a great year. And if they're weak on one side, they're going to double team the other guy. So
and that's and that's what I just said. I said I think the kid from Morgan State will be your plug and play piece, and I don't think he'll be able to replace Jared Verse, but he'll be able to do enough to maintain. And I think Marvin Jones and the kid Tomiwa from West Virginia will come along, but those guys will be able to develop over 2-3 years and be great pieces for you potentially. So
I think our front four this past season was able to generate enough pass rush that we didn't have to blitz just frequently. We blitzed strategically, but if you don't generate that pass rush up front, you must start blitzing, which opens up your defense, Yeah,
absolutely. And then on the defensive back side, back to that, you lose, like we talked about, Fabian Lovett, Braden Fisk, which can't be understated. The only guys you brought in so far are Grady Kelly from Colorado State, who's a productive kid there. He was an all-conference selection, I believe, his freshman year.
He's a redshirt junior.
Yeah, so he's got, I think, 1 or 2 years left.
He's got 2 years left,
which is good. He once again, he's not Braden Fisk. He's I think a little undersized, but he has production. This is a guy that will be a rotational piece. Like I think
he's a Florida kid. He's a Florida kid,
but he's not Braden Fisk. Let's get that straight.
No,
he's not Braden Fisk.
No,
but you did that because you like what you have. You have Darrell Jackson finally coming back. You saw a little bit of him in the Georgia game. You have Farmer, which you didn't know if he was coming back or not, but it looks like he is. And then you like what you have, Daniel Lyons, a young player, and then you have young guys like Keith Sampson, along with some other defensive tackles that are young. So once again, you're banking on what you have, along with the younger development of guys you've recruited, like Daniel Lyons and Keith Sampson. You need those guys to step up. You did lose Malcolm Ray, which is why you brought in Grady Kelly for the most part, right? It's a 1-for-1 kind of. Right. Malcolm Ray, who was a decent player, but once again, not an all ACC type player. And Grady Kelly's, you like the upside, and you like that you have multiple years of him, so it's a 1-for-1. I would have liked to see you bring in either a blue chip type player. Once again, you saw what having a Braden Fisk type player can do for you interior wise. I would have liked to see if they could have gotten someone like that. Not that I don't like Grady Kelly, not that I don't like that pick, but could you have swung someone like that? Could you have made a deal to get? Was there anyone available in that interior position that you could have swung like that? That could have been a compliment to Farmer and Jackson, because you're really banking on. If you like your rotation, if you like to rotate guys in and out, you're really banking on Lyons and Sampson being ready next season. You are banking on those young kids ready to be able to step in next year. Or you're expecting Kelly to really break out. So I think that'll be, because like you just said, that line really, really made things run last year. It made the linebackers be effective last year, your veteran linebackers be effective, which helped out the defensive backs behind them. And that defense, like we all forgot, we forget that defense didn't give up a passing touchdown for the last like 3 or 4 games last year because it was humming so well. And so
I think you bring a good point that this line in 2024 needs to come alive pretty quickly, okay? Because your linebacker core is young.
Yes.
And it's inexperienced at this point, and we really have potential there. We have potential, but we don't have, besides DJ Lundy, who we always said is not really a true starter. Well, he's the grandpa in there now. He's the guy with the most experience, and he is, right now, he's your leader in the linebacker room. Who else would be the leader of that room? No one.
And that's where I disagree with this article, is that they give the additions from Florida State at a B+ right now. And the only guy you've added is the kid from Alabama, Sean Murphy. And like you said, he has almost no
high ceiling potential.
He has potential, but no production. Right. And you need to bring in guys that have actual production because you lost them. You lost Bethune.
Especially if your upfront guys aren't getting the job done, then it's going to put more pressure on the linebackers. If the offensive linemen don't have to be playing around with your defensive line guys, they're going to go to the second level, and then they start taking out your linebackers, and you got a problem. So it's going to be interesting.
You saw that preview in the Georgia game. You saw when you were missing your front seven, your front defensive line, and you had your young linebackers in. It doesn't look pretty, and I'm not saying that that's going to be the script next year, but when you're playing younger guys on the front and the middle of the field, and you're playing Blake Nicholson and Justin Cryer and Omar Graham, and you've only brought in you got DJ Lundy back, but he's not the best coverage linebacker. He's a great run stuffer. He can do that, but and then you brought in Sean Murphy, who is absolutely a talented guy, but once again he hasn't gotten the snaps on the field. It's concerning to me that you haven't yet, and that's not to say they won't. I'm just looking at this period of time. I do think that they should be. If they aren't, I believe they still are looking for the right guy or two, whether it's probably in the spring now, that they'll bring in as a veteran in this room, because right now they just do not have enough snaps in this room to make me feel comfortable at what's there. Because like you said, the veteran in the room, it's just DJ Lundy. He's like the grandfather of the room, and everyone else is a kid.
And he had good production last season. I looked at his numbers.
He's a good player.
Yeah.
He's not elite. He's not an elite guy. An elite guy,
right?
But he can get the job done.
But he is going to play a lot of football, and if he were to get hurt,
you're screwed.
Then you're going to have to see guys really step up, and they're going to have to step up quick. If not, people are going to try to run the ball down your throat. And when they do that, that opens up the pass game big time against you, because your safeties have to come up. They have to help support and so on. So it's going to be interesting. I think the defensive side worries me more than the offensive side, despite the great potential guys we have brought in, which my count is 14 transfers have come in now. That's the number I have.
I think it's 16.
16. I'm missing a couple here.
Maybe you may be
okay.
Right.
It's all right. I have 14, but that's all right.
But
it doesn't matter.
The defensive side is where you do see the inexperience of the guys you're bringing in, because we just talked about the linebacker. You bring in Sean Murphy where you need experience, and you don't really get that. But he's going to compete for a starting spot, because I think anyone you bring in is going to compete for a starting spot. You then look at defensive back. And this is another position where at first I didn't know if we needed depth at defensive back.
I think we're loaded there.
But when you look at the depth chart here, and this is guys that you're going to be losing. That's what I'm saying. You're losing Akeem Dent.
Yeah.
You're losing Renardo Green. You're losing Jaron Jones. You're losing your 3 starters there. You're getting Ventrell Cypress back, which is great.
Yep.
You're losing your 3 starters here. Great starters here. Freshman, who will be a sophomore. Greedy Vance is coming back. Kevin Knowles, which,
yeah, he's gaining
not
experience.
Very good. He's not really good at Florida, but he's. Okay. I don't think he's a great player for if a championship level team unless he develops in the season. But you need to get better at this position. This is going to be a true sophomore. This is going to be a true redshirt sophomore. So the idea is you're losing a bunch of guys. Now you're bringing in some true freshmen who are talented. You're bringing in 4 defensive backs, right?
Well, I think Thomas is going to push for a starting role on the other side. He's not going to be playing behind Cypress. I don't see that.
I think some people thought that you may need to bring in one or two more veteran guys or 1 or 2 defensive playmakers to allow you don't want to rush some of those freshmen you just signed to go right into starting spots or compete. Now, maybe that's the plan. That's why you sign a high 4 or 5-star guy, blue chip guy out of high school.
I'll be honest with you. If some of these guys that have come in from Alabama, okay, because it's Alabama, the fan expectation and what we've read, you peruse the media, I peruse the media, and everybody's fallen in love. We're rating Alabama and we're taking all these guys. I think the fan base believes these guys are going to come in and start making huge contributions like they were starters out there at Alabama. Don't get us wrong here. I think these guys have outstanding potential. Yeah. The question is, can they get into the rotation and start playing meaningful minutes? And because they're, you know what, KB? They almost have to. They almost have to, because you're going to have some injuries back there. These guys have to grow up now really fast. I think they've had excellent training at Alabama, without a doubt. I think they've had excellent competition at Alabama, without any doubt. I think they have high ceiling potential, without a doubt. The question is, they're going to be thrown more into the fire, because why would you bring these guys in if you didn't think you're going to get something out of them in the next 2 seasons?
Yeah, no, you're right. And I think you brought up the point there is that you are getting guys that have had a high bar of training. Like, you're not bringing in guys from a program you're not sure about.
Marshall or Toledo.
I don't want to throw something.
No, I'm just saying it's a difference.
But that they're getting the best training. I think the connection here, like many have pointed out, is that Patrick Surtain coached both of these players they brought in.
He knows
high
them,
school.
Right.
So he knows them. People question Devontae Brown from Miami in that he wasn't necessarily the best player at Miami. He was better at UCF when he went there before transferring to Miami.
He had more production there the year before.
There under, they say, better coaching. So, and he has more experience. So that is where they thought that Florida State would go after more, because this is going to be a very young room next year, and they thought they would bring in a veteran. And maybe he's that veteran. Surtain's like, you are going to be the guy that you're going to be the calming veteran leadership that we need, because I know you and I can trust you to be kind of my ears and my eyes and my leader in that room. And Earl Little is, like you said, that talented guy that's been in the DB room at Alabama, been trained up, and can be that future star in that room. Or, like you said, rotate in if there is injury, be the guy that steps up. So you kind of see the mix of methodologies. We need a leader in that room, another leader in that room, because you lost 3 of them. You get a veteran in there. He may not be the all ACC kid, but he could. Sometimes you just need a guy that can be a voice of the coach. And Surtain knows Devontae Brown and knows who he is and what he is. May not be an all ACC selection, but can be a leader in that room, even if he's not starting. And you have a potential high ceiling kid.
Well, let's remember too that a lot of these defensive backs, secondary guys, play on special teams as well. Okay, because they have the motor, they have them, and you can see it when they came over from Alabama. A lot of their their resume is special teams, and a lot of these guys, when you go to the next level, the NFL, a lot of these guys make a team their ability to play on special teams. So these guys want to play on special teams. So if they're not starting, but they're in the rotation, then they can go out and make their name on special teams as well. So you're bringing some of these guys in to do that for you, because special teams win and lose games. We know that.
Absolutely. No, that's a great point. And we know Mike Norvell likes to he's not afraid to put starters on special teams either. If he puts the most talented kids on special teams because he believes in special teams wins games and often does. So
exactly.
You're totally right. You're totally right. And that's one of the reasons also why they brought in Jaden Lucas, because he was an all Big Ten, I believe, special teams player at Indiana. So that's a good point. So yeah, I mean, just to wrap up that segment in terms of who they brought in, I think we talked about it. They're not just building for this season. You're seeing a mix of the instant impact players like DJ and some of these guys, but you're seeing that they are very much building for 2025 and 2026. Mike Norvell's seen the bigger picture here, and that you just had your first really high blue chip class in high school this past season, or this current season, this current signing class. And now you've raised it to, you just signed now with the transfers in, it's almost 70% blue chip players. And I think that, the Alabama news really helped you in that and really raising that floor of talent. But he sees an opening now, and he sees the momentum that they have. Number 5, number 6 team in the country, undefeated. He sees the momentum, he's grasping it, and he's really, really building the future and raising. Because if he believes that after DJ, Luke or Blake are going to be your next quarterback, he sees the future of building talent in the defensive back room, the offensive line, the receiver room, the running back room. He's seen the vision for this and bringing in young players and developing them so that when it's the next guy's time to come and step in, those guys are ready to play. And I like that vision. I like that thinking of not just.
Well, you're always playing for the next year.
It's chess.
You're not only playing for 24, but you're thinking, I'm got to get ready for 25. You don't, you know what I'm saying?
Especially when you know that, you can't be afraid, because some of these guys will come and go. But if you build up enough talent at these positions, like we just talked about with the running back room, receiving room, the offensive line room, you won't be afraid to lose a couple of guys, because that either you'll be signing them in high school, or you've already transferred enough guys in that if losing 2 or 3 of them won't hurt you. So that is the big thing.
Right. You know what? But as a coach too, and Norvell knows he must sleep better at night, that he understands the portal. He's been very effective with the portal, and he knows the portal can kind of bail him out on plug and play if he needs it, because it's rare that a high school guy is going to come in to play meaningful snaps. I don't care if he's a 4 or 5-star guy, to play meaningful snaps that you can go out, get a guy that's been in a program for 2 years, even if he hasn't played much. He's trained hard, he's practiced hard, he's competed hard, and you can't find that type of guy only in high school. He knows you could be bailed out.
But you can. But I would argue
it's hard.
I would argue that you will get more hits from high school than you will from the portal. That if you are recruiting at the highest level, you will be able to recruit and keep your most impactful players more often than not.
Well, we're going to find that out if your theory is correct with a guy like Hakeem Williams or a guy like Julian Amello. He's been in the system 3 years. You know what I mean? We got to see if these guys are going to hit. But my suggestion is, if you're coming up a little short, which we've debated about the high school recruiting, like on the defensive line, the portal is there. What if you didn't have a portal and you're not a good recruiter in high school?
Then you wouldn't have a job.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. So they use this portal almost as a crutch, and I don't think it's bad. I think they've had great success getting guys out of there. I'm not so concerned about missing hard. Well, I shouldn't say that. I mean, I feel you can make up what you're lacking through the portal. I'm a little surprised he's brought in. I have 14 guys at this point. I may not have that number right. That's a lot, and they're at spring. You don't think he's going to go out and find a couple more guys?
I think guys will leave.
Yeah, I think guys will leave too.
A scholarship limitation too, because of the penalty. So.
Let me bring this up too. Seminoles.com. Tell me if I'm right or wrong. That's the official site, the official roster for Florida State, from what I've seen. It has everything except whether a guy's on scholarship or not. I can't tell if a guy's on scholarship. I can't tell if a guy's on a full or partial. I can't tell if a guy is a preferred walk-on or a walk-on or, this type of thing. Maybe there's a reason for that. I don't know. But there's guys on that list who I looked at how much they played at all, okay, and they haven't played. Some of these guys are legacy guys. I get it, okay, and I love the legacy guys. Peter Warwick Jr. hasn't really found the field much. Okay, yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. Is the question is who's taking a scholarship that they need to say you need to go find somewhere else? Because if you keep bringing in, I can't imagine they're not going to find a couple guys in the spring
for long isn't going to have a scholarship on the team.
Yeah,
in this day and age, a guy that's not contributing for long isn't going to have a scholarship.
If you're a walk-on, you can stay. You can play on the scout team.
They get a preferred walk-on status.
Yeah.
And we'll talk.
Well, they just got a quarterback as a preferred walk-on.
But before I go to that, we were talking about draft, high school recruitment versus transfers, and I want to bring up this because I thought it was interesting. It goes to my point.
Right.
In that, looking through an NFL first-round draft, which impactful players go in the first round, 26 first-rounders are not transfer players in the latest mock draft for the NFL.
They're developed.
Do you find that surprising or not surprising?
I found it kind of surprising when I read that earlier this week.
And I think that speaks to my point in that if you recruit at the high school level at an elite level, a top 5 level, like a Georgia, like an Alabama did, like an Ohio State did, that you will retain your best talent because those players will make an impact early enough that they will not want to leave. They will not leave because they will contribute early. They will stay, and you will realize their impact. You will feel their impact, and they will not go anywhere. But that's where I'm talking about you getting blue chip recruits who you realize are talented enough that will make an impact on your team.
Well, don't you think we're getting there? We're kind of now getting to the 4 level. We're really striking hard and harvesting 4s.
100%. I think we're starting to get there. I don't think we haven't been there in a while where we felt the impact of a redshirt freshman or in a while, right? The last guy I feel like that was like Jameis Winston, where he was redshirt of the year and then he came in and he lit the world on fire, right? You don't get many of those type players, but sometimes certain programs do. You seem like they get a lot of young guys who are starting as redshirt freshmen or just true freshmen at different positions, not quarterback really, but different positions. We haven't had a lot of those recently just because of what we've been recruiting, but with this latest class where you have like Camp Davis and Charles Lester, these type of players that you're bringing in, I think you will get more of those guys that you retain longer because they make impacts faster.
Okay. And let's transition into stability of the coaching staff and stability of your head coach. This is a good time to transition because you cannot get that type of recruiting out of the high school ranks, which we believe is important, unless you have that stability, okay? Because then you're always kind of rebuilding the coaching staff. We've seen the bailout at Alabama, whether it's because Saban retired or if it was another coach. You know what I mean? That people bail out in this new era. There's no loyalty. There's no... Basically, God, I wanted to go to Florida State my whole life, and I wanted to be a Seminole. It's, I'll go in a minute. So what we're saying is, and we're not going to spend a lot of time on this, the retention of Norvell, and we could sit here and debate whether he was high on the list to go to Alabama or he wasn't. I don't think he was that high on the list, to be honest. That's my honest opinion. That's no rip on Coach Norvell. I think it was the agent, Sexton, who has a lot of these guys, was playing the way he should play. And that's a business approach to this, floating stuff out there, and so on and so on. And it was leverage for more money for Coach Mike Norvell, and it's good for the program. But it's going to, it costs more money to keep this guy. So we don't know what the final figures were. It's 10 plus mil, whatever. But what it does, you can see what it does. It allows you to stabilize your program increase your recruiting either through portal or through the high school ranks, and it gives you that stability for the next few years. But let's say this. If, and this is what I think is a big deal, and we're going to lead to it right now. You might have a comment on that, and then we'll lead to it. To me, the number one issue for this Florida State football program is departure out of the ACC. I'm not going to let up on that. I put this out on Twitter all the time that they must get out, because if you don't, you're going to lose a coach like Norvell. You're going to lose players in NIL going out because you can't compete money-wise. We've talked about that. We don't need to go through that. Now, do you have any comments about Norvell staying versus leaving, what your feelings were on that, before we jump into what the latest is on this ACC lawsuit?
Yeah, well, now Mike Norvell is a top five paid coach. And I think with that comes the expectations too. So there's expectations now that I think always, you're always going to the ACC championship. You are being paid alongside Lincoln Riley, Dabo Sweeney, and Kirby Smart. Two of those coaches have national championships, multiple national championships. And I think, you have to understand that when you take that kind of money, you need to accept those type of expectations, And I think that we have to be consistently putting that bar up next to them. And I think also you have to recruit at that level of that money and that prestige that comes with that. So, we need to win 10 games, 11 games 12 games next year, right? To get to an ACC title, to get to the playoffs. I think anything below the ACC title next year is a failure, and he needs to be held to that standard.
I don't.
Oh, then don't make time in the
No. Here's what I think. You could lose the ACC title, but you better be damn good enough to get into the playoffs, even if you're in second place and you lose. Well, I don't know if it's going to happen.
You're not playing an elite schedule. So
what I'm saying is, when you're one of the top 5 paid coaches in the league, okay, you need to make the playoffs every year.
Exactly.
Every year.
Winning the ACC title is the only way that Florida
State's that guarantees you in KB. It doesn't mean a second place ACC. There's nothing that says a second place ACC. Okay, well,
there's nothing that guarantees that they will.
That's your opinion.
There's nothing that guarantees that a second place ACC team.
I'm not saying it does. Either. I'm not saying it does guarantee anything. What I'm saying is, Coach Norvell needs to ensure that he makes the playoffs. Because when you're making this kind of money, you brought in all these players. Failure to make that, the fan base is going to ask more questions.
Yeah, as they should.
As they should. We can't keep using excuses and explanations, which you could get by with when there was only 4 teams. Well, we had injuries or we had a young team. You've got to play around that. Or if DJU, unfortunately, has an injury for 2 or 3 key games, you've got to work your second quarterback enough. You've got to give them enough work so they're ready to go. We can't have excuses when you're making this kind of money. Your football team has to have next man up like we did in 23, next man up, and play through it. But I feel the pressure is you got to make the playoffs. If you finish second, you better find a way to finish second in the ACC. You better get into that playoff. I don't know how the hell you would do it, but you better be there.
Yeah, that's it.
Well, you could potentially go to the ACC championship game undefeated, lose to, let's pick one, Louisville, who's lost 2 games, but they're in second place, lose to them, have 1 loss by a field goal, and you could make it to the playoffs? Sure you could.
Now with Florida State's schedule.
Well, you feel there's a conspiracy against the ACC and Florida State, and there's no way now, correct?
I think the conspiracy has been proven. I don't think there is. I'm not thinking there is. I think it's been proven at this point, and I just don't think.
And I don't disagree with that. I don't disagree with that.
Also, Florida State's schedule doesn't look tough enough next year. I think they'll maybe have 2 ranked teams on their schedule next year, 2 or 3 maybe. Notre Dame and Clemson will be their toughest games next year.
They'll be in the top 20. Yeah.
So they don't have enough room for mistakes next year. That's my thing. If they were playing the Big Ten, it'd be different. But the ACC does not give them enough room for error. They have to win the ACC.
It's going to be interesting. But like I say, Mike Norvell's pressure now has got to make playoffs.
Yeah. You get paid. You get paid. You
got to, and you've got to take the criticism that comes with it. There is, let's face it, the Florida State fan base is great, and they're very, very good. But what they tend to do is they do a lot of hugging and a lot of kissing of the team, and I get that. We're all for it. There's no one been around the team much longer than I have, and we're all fans of this team. We're all fans of the players. We're all a big family. I get all of that. But when the reality says there's things going wrong, you have to admit what the reality is. So there's big hopes for this, and Mike Norvell does take on more pressure when you take on more money, period. Yep. Period. So let me transition into what's going on with the lawsuit, because now and then I do post up how many days it's been since the lawsuit started, which I have the start date is December the 22nd. And I'm going to read through a little bit of this, but not a lot. Here's what the latest is. There's jockeying on both sides, the ACC and FSU, okay? And that's what happens in a lawsuit. There's jockeying that goes back and forth between the law teams, okay? And that's what's going on. Now, the biggest thing is the ACC, and I'm not a lawyer. I don't pretend to be an expert in this, so everybody can go out and read the articles themselves. But the bottom line is the ACC filed what they call a declaratory judgment. Now, a declaratory judgment is an amendment to the original lawsuit. And in this declaratory judgment, they're basically asking the court, okay, now, because they filed in North Carolina, Florida State filed in Florida. So wherever the hell that is all going is up in the air. But they filed an amendment to their original lawsuit, KB, that is basically asking the court, okay, to define some of the rules in this thing of what can happen and what the rights of one side is. They're asking, and I'm going to quote from this article that I have here, they're asking that FSU not be allowed to conduct business as usual in the ACC world. Basically meaning they think the ACC believes FSU, because of their lawsuits, they should not be allowed into basic business meetings with the ACC, okay? To basically lock them outside of a meeting. It would be like you at your company, they say you're no longer invited to come in to the company business, right? Yeah. So, and part of this is they are suggesting to the court that because of the lawsuit brought by Florida State, it's not right for them to sit in there. And one of their allegations was Florida State leaked out financial information that the ACC felt was close hold, and they violated the rules of leaking out that revenue information. Okay? So the league is seeking this declaratory judgment that its grants of rights media are valid and enforceable contracts, and that Florida State does not have the right to just on their own, anytime they want, to say we want out, that they signed these agreements twice, okay, and ratified them twice, and that they can't just leave anytime they want. And also now the league is also seeking damages, financial damages, for alleged violations of the bylaws, okay, of leaking information. Now, when you're seeking financial damages, you're talking millions of dollars, not hundreds, not thousands, you know, and that's a big problem, potentially. Now, yeah, they said in their argument the current declaratory judgment, FSU is violating an agreement league members signed twice, the grant of rights, and it's irrevocable. So they're saying that, and they feel they breached duty as a league member and should be excluded from ACC business. So that's kind of where we are now, and that happened in the past week. So there's a lot of jockeying going on. There's a lot of, allegations being thrown out. I am waiting for what they call discovery motions. Mm-hmm. Now, courts and judges, they like to see both sides work it out. No judge wants any type of argument before him. The first thing a judge will always ask is, why couldn't you guys work this out? What is it? Because now you're asking me to work it out. That's kind of, the how a thing goes like this. I don't care what kind of case it is in civil law. But right now, I'm waiting for when discovery starts. When discovery starts, that's when each side can ask the other. Florida State can ask for certain things, documents, depositions about these types of contracts and all that. And that will be explosive.
Yeah. Great.
So that's kind of where we are. I'm not going to bore everybody with all this legal stuff, but I am saying again, this is the most important issue for the Florida State athletic program and Florida State University. They are not going to back down at this point. If they win this, or get a settlement, okay? I don't think it's going to go to court. I think it's going to get settled between the two parties. It will cost Florida State some money. But if it went to court and Florida State won, then they could ask for damages from the ACC and to pay the legal fees. If Florida State were to lose in a court trial or before a judge, then they could be held liable for millions of dollars as well. So that's kind of where we're at, and this will play out for a while. But I like following it. I try to follow it as closely as I can. There's a few people on Twitter following it, but it's very interesting to see where this is going to go.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah.
Because you and I both know, without departure from here, financially, Florida State won't be able to survive and compete in to the mega conferences.
Oh, yeah. I just know we need to get out. I'm not smart enough to know the legalese and crap like that. So I'll let the lawyers and Twitter figure that out and inform me what it means. But I think we all know it needs to happen faster, sooner rather than later. And if it doesn't, Florida State will no longer be relevant in college football. So in all sports, not just college football, all sports. So yeah, thank you for that breakdown.
And one other comment. Yeah, DJ Ferg here says, Florida State of Florida has some of the strongest sunshine laws in the country, meaning that a lot of things that go on have to be transparent. Yeah. So that is also going to play into some of this.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how Clemson approaches this, because I think they're right behind. They want to see what happens with Florida State and how Florida State works it out with the ACC before they make a real aggressive move, because once again, Florida State's in a better position being the state of Florida versus, Clemson being South Carolina, I believe, in terms of, I don't know their laws, but that's a great point. So I think Clemson's kind of in the wings waiting to see how Florida State, what happens with them in the ACC before they make a very aggressive move on this. And obviously I think they're hoping for the best with Florida State because they want to get out too. It'll be interesting. So that's a really, really good point.
Yeah. Hey, listen, I've had a few technical things on my end. What the hell's going on? I don't know, weather or whatever, but we're still speaking, I think.
Yeah.
Okay.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you guys. We appreciate it. So we're going to let you go. So have a great weekend. Enjoy the snow if you have it. Stay safe out there. And the old man, if he unfreezes, he'll probably be saying goodbye too. Have a great weekend, guys. Enjoy yourself.
All right, goodbye, guys. Goodbye.
And enjoy the NFL weekend. Have a great one, y'all.
Stay safe. Stay safe.